Learning to be inaccessible to women's manipulations won't prepare you for the freedom of finding yourself. No one warns you about that. Everyone's busy teaching you tricks, red flags, ways to say no or be mysterious, never letting you see the real enemy isn't her at all. It's the part of you that's always waiting for permission to live your own life. He spent years perfecting the art of being wanted, becoming whoever she needed, solving every mood, guessing every silence. Every relationship felt like a new audition. If she smiled, he relaxed. If she frowned, he scrambled to fix it, trading his instincts for her approval, his voice for a place beside her. But late one night, staring into the mirror, he finally saw it, the hollowed-out version of himself, full of answers for everyone but the man staring back. Jung once wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. He realized his whole life had been someone else's dream. What was the difference between surviving in a web of someone else's rules and actually being alive? Why are we so afraid to stand our ground? Why is it easier to win her approval than risk losing her? Why do men call it strength to control women, but weakness to be controlled by their own need for connection? He started to see the true mechanism. It wasn't about dodging manipulation, but about ending his own addiction to validation. The more he chased her praise, the emptier he felt. The less he risked being alone, the more alone he became inside. So he made a silent vow, right then and there. I won't shape myself to fit her script. I'll speak what's true, even if it means silence, even if it means losing the comfort I've mistaken for love. The most dangerous thing a man can do is believe first in himself, before anyone else does. That's where this journey begins, not with rebellion against her, but with a quiet revolt against every version of himself that ever waited for permission. He didn't notice the pattern at first. Like a slow drip, it built up over months and years, 100 little choices that never felt like surrender until he woke up unable to make a single decision without wondering, how will she react? It wasn't fear of her, but fear of that empty space inside, the silence that followed every lost piece of himself. He learned all the tricks: play hard to get, keep secrets, be less available. But deep down, every move was still about her approval. The mask changed, but the addiction stayed. Jung taught that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. He saw himself in that line. He remembered the nights he swallowed his opinions to keep things smooth, the weekends he spent at her favorite places, the laughter he faked for jokes that didn't land. The cost was subtle. He still looked strong, still played the confident man, but each time he let himself be shaped by someone else's desire, he lost the map back to himself. Why is it so easy to become a master of compromise? Why do we believe that conflict means failure, that discomfort means danger? Why do so many men teach themselves to disappear, one small concession at a time? He realized then, freedom doesn't begin when you learn to resist her games. Freedom begins the first moment you ask, what do I want, if no one's watching? It's not about being unkind, or cold, or distant. It's about knowing what you stand for, and standing for it even when the room grows cold. He started to change the script. I will not ask for permission to be myself. I will not measure my worth by the look in her eyes. I will let silence be, if it's the cost of honesty. The world rewards you for being easy, agreeable, always the good guy. But every time you abandon yourself to keep someone else happy, you teach her, and yourself, that your needs are optional. Most men never notice the price until it's too late. They wake up in someone else's story, unable to remember what they ever wanted. But not this time. Tonight, he sits with his own discomfort, lets it burn, lets it teach. Because a man who's willing to be alone is the only man who's finally free. It happens on an ordinary morning in the smallest way. He pours his coffee, chooses the shirt he actually likes, and for once, says no when she suggests something he doesn't want to do. There's a flicker of tension. The moment she goes quiet, eyebrows raised, waiting for him to backpedal or soften his answer. It used to work. He would have apologized, spun a new excuse, or given in just to keep the air clear. But not today, Jung wrote. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. For the first time, he notices the old script running in the background, a lifetime of subtle, learned apologies. Sorry for being late. Sorry for saying what I think. Sorry for wanting something different. Every apology was a thread tying him to the boy he used to be, the one who thought love meant never disappointing anyone. Why do we carry this fear of letting others down? Why do we believe our value is measured by how little trouble we cause, how quickly we fix our mood, how well we smooth every edge of conflict? Why is it so hard to say no, and mean it, and let that be enough? He sees it now. Every relationship becomes a reflection of how much you're willing to stand for yourself. The less you apologize for being real, the more you discover who truly values you. Not just the mask, but the man. He sets new rules. I will not explain my no. I will not rush to fix feelings that aren't mine. I will accept that my truth may disappoint her and survive the silence that follows. Patterns shift. The first time he holds his ground, she gets distant. Maybe she's upset, maybe she's testing. But something new happens. He doesn't rush to close the gap. He lets her be disappointed. He lets himself be unbothered. The peace that follows isn't empty. It's the feeling of taking up space in his own life for the first time. Most men never pass this test. They think love means never upsetting a woman, never risking a crack in the surface. But the surface is just a stage. Real connection begins where performance ends. Tonight, he's quiet, but not afraid. He's not waiting for her to smile. He's finally listening for the only approval that matters, his own. He used to think the hardest part would be the argument, the raised voices, the cold distance, the moment she said, "I can't believe you're acting this way." But it isn't the argument that stings. Your subscription and comment aren't just numbers. They're signals that decide what video comes next. Share your thoughts or ideas in the comments. They often become the foundation for news stories. Interestingly, over 90% of viewers watch my videos without subscribing. That's okay. It means the content pulls you in. But subscribing helps you stay updated with the next parts. Hit subscribe, and let's create the next video together. It's what comes after. The heavy quiet. The look in her eyes that says you're not who she thought you were. The subtle message that you've failed some unspoken test. He feels the urge to explain himself, to justify, to fix. He feels the old instinct to ask, "Are you okay?" Not out of care, but out of guilt. Jung said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to yourself." He sits in that silence, letting it stretch longer than ever before. It's not comfort, but it's real. He realizes the world teaches men to fear this silence, to fill it with noise, gifts, apologies, even lies. But tonight, he lets it breathe. He doesn't try to repair the gap. He doesn't chase her back into closeness. He simply stays, present, uncomfortable, and true. Why do we run from these moments? Why is the absence of harmony more terrifying than the absence of truth? Why do so many men abandon their boundaries the second they sense withdrawal or disappointment? He learns. If she leaves because you stop performing, let her. If silence follows your honesty, let it teach you patience. If your worth can't survive a moment of distance, it was never truly yours. He finds something new in this silence, a kind of self-respect that doesn't depend on her mood. He sees that relationships built on endless compromise are always fragile, always one misunderstanding away from collapse. Most men keep the peace at any cost, fearing the unknown more than their own invisibility. But the ones who grow, who become unshakable, are those who can sit with discomfort, who don't scramble to patch every tear in the fabric. Tonight, for the first time, he makes room for her feelings and his own. He lets the storm pass, knowing that not every silence needs to be broken. And in that space, he starts to feel a new kind of freedom, a quiet strength that's his alone. Have you ever chosen to let the silence stay, even when every part of you wanted to fill it? What happened next? And what did you learn about yourself? Something changes the day he stops asking himself, "Does she still want me?" and starts asking, "Do I want this?" He notices the world rewards men who compete for attention, be funnier, richer, more attentive, more whatever she needs. But the moment you stop chasing, you see the trap. Trying to be chosen means you're always for sale. He remembers the times he changed plans, opinions, even dreams for the promise of her affection, thinking love was something to win, something to earn. Now, for the first time, he wonders what it would be like to want a woman without needing her to need him. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." He sees it now. All those years trying to be desirable only made him forgettable. The men who become irreplaceable aren't the ones who please, but the ones who possess themselves, whose presence doesn't beg, doesn't rush, doesn't flinch. Why do we fear being unwanted? Why do we equate a woman's approval with our value as men? Why does the need to be picked turn strong men into shadows? He creates new boundaries. I will not audition for love. I will not shrink my life to fit into someone else's vision. I will not apologize for being wanted by fewer, but respected by myself. The shift is real. Some women lose interest. Others are drawn closer, surprised by the new gravity in his presence. He becomes less predictable, less quick to please, more likely to say no, more interested in what excites him than what impresses others. The irony, the less he tries, the more attractive he becomes, not to all, but to those who see the real man, not just the mask. Most men never get here. They live to be chosen, to be liked, to fill every silence with a new trick or sacrifice. But he, today, chooses himself, not out of arrogance but necessity. Because to be a man is not to be needed, but to be real. Tonight, he sleeps deeper. He dreams not of being wanted, but of being true. And in that dream, he wakes more alive than ever. He learns, almost by accident, that every true yes begins with a real no. It happens the day she asks him to change his plans, again for her convenience. Old habits scream at him to yield, to bend, to keep the peace. But instead, he says, simply and without explanation, no. I have something important to do. For a moment, the air crackles. She is shocked, maybe even hurt. The urge to apologize rises, but he swallows it, holding his ground. There's nothing cruel in his refusal, only calm certainty. Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. He sees that every no is a piece of that acceptance, a statement that his time, his plans, his values are real, even when they don't align with hers. Each time he stands firm, it feels less like a fight and more like breathing. For the first time, he feels the quiet joy of being responsible only for his own life. Why do we imagine that saying no will cost us everything? Why do we dread the loss of approval more than the loss of our own center? Why is it so much harder to disappoint someone else than to disappoint ourselves? He revises his code. I will say no when it matters, without guilt. I will keep my promises to myself, even if it means breaking plans for others. I will accept that real love survives disappointment and grows stronger because of it. He notices the world does not end. Sometimes, the people who matter respect him more. Sometimes, others drift away. Each loss reveals the truth. Those who leave were only there for the man who bent, not the man who stands. And those who remain, they are drawn to his clarity, his groundedness, his refusal to live small. Most men never find this freedom. They barter away their boundaries, then wonder why life feels empty. But he is learning. True power is not domination or resistance. It's the peace of not needing to be anything but himself. Tonight, for the first time, he looks forward to tomorrow, not because of who might choose him, but because of the man he is becoming. At first, it was just about finding peace. He wasn't looking to impress anyone. He was just tired of living on other people's terms. But as the weeks passed, something curious began to happen. The same people who once took him for granted started to look at him differently. He said less, but his words carried weight. He didn't chase approval, and yet, respect began to grow in the places where there had only been expectation. Carl Jung wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. The world senses when a man does this. His posture changes. His eyes are steady. He moves through rooms with purpose, not apology. Old friends, past lovers, even strangers notice something has shifted. Some try to test him, pushing old boundaries, hoping he'll revert to the easy, agreeable man he once was. He doesn't. Some admire him. Some resent him. He no longer bends to please, but he's not harsh or arrogant. There is warmth, but there are limits. There is kindness, but never at the expense of his dignity. Why does true self-acceptance unsettle others? Why do people sometimes fear, envy, or even attack what they secretly wish they could embody themselves? Why is it that when you finally need no one's approval, the world suddenly starts offering it? He sees the new pattern. Those who value his presence now bring their best, knowing they cannot control him. Those who only wanted the old version quietly disappear. New opportunities open, not because he chased them, but because he stands where he is, unshakable. Most men never reach this stage. They stall at the edge of freedom, afraid of losing what was never truly theirs. But he knows, when you no longer need validation, you become the kind of man others cannot ignore. Tonight, he walks through the city, feeling the energy shift around him. Not everyone likes him, but those who matter respect him. And for the first time, he knows the difference. His life is not louder, but it is deeper. Not fuller, but richer. And all of it is finally, truly his. Freedom, he learns, is not a finish line but a daily practice. 100 small choices to stand for himself even when the world would have him kneel. He wakes each morning not wondering, who must I please, but asking, how will I honor myself today? It's in the way he makes his coffee, the way he turns down what doesn't excite him, the way he listens to his own intuition, even when it leads him off the beaten path. The validation that once felt like oxygen now feels like a faint perfume, pleasant, but unnecessary. Jung once wrote, he who looks outside, dreams. He who looks inside, awakes. He is awake now. He feels his own gravity, the silent strength that cannot be shaken by approval or rejection. He sees how every lesson, the loneliness, the failed compromises, the storms and silences, were steps on the path to something no one else could give him, the unbreakable peace of self-respect. Why do so many men spend their lives running from themselves? Why do they give away their power, their choices, their dreams for comfort that never lasts? Why does the world teach us that the highest goal is to be needed instead of to be whole? He answers with new commandments. I will create a life that excites me, not just one that is safe. I will accept being misunderstood if it means being true. I will invite love, but never need it to define me. He no longer measures success by the number of people who want him, but by the depth of his own fulfillment. He surrounds himself only with those who respect the man he has become, not the man they remember or the man they wish he could be. Most men spend their lives searching for approval and wonder why they feel empty at the end. But he walks forward now with nothing to prove and everything to live. Tonight, he stands on his balcony, city lights flickering below. He smiles, not for anyone else, not for the woman who might come and go, but for himself. He is free, at last, in the only way that matters, from within. If you've come this far, brother, you already know, no one will hand you the permission slip for your own freedom. There's no applause, no parade, no magic moment when the world steps aside and says, now you can be yourself. There's only you, a quiet promise, and the next choice you make. Carl Jung once wrote, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. It's terrifying because it means letting go of the need to be chosen, to be approved, to fit in. It means risking misunderstanding, silence, even loneliness. But on the other side is something stronger than all the old fears, a peace that cannot be bargained for, a self-respect that does not need an audience. You've watched a man go from living for the approval of women to living for the approval of his own soul. You've seen him lose friends, lovers, easy days, only to find himself and a life worth living. He is not perfect. He is not always strong. But he is awake, and that makes him dangerous in the best way. Dangerous to a world that thrives on obedience. Dangerous to anyone who hopes to control him. And most of all, dangerous to his own old habits, the ones that kept him small. So now I turn to you. Where are you still waiting for permission to be yourself? Where have you traded your truth for comfort? What would you risk, today, if you stopped needing to be chosen and started choosing yourself? I challenge you. Write your answer. Not just for the algorithm, not just for me, but for you. So you remember this story was never just about him. It's about you and the life you're still building. No one will live it for you, brother. But if you dare to begin, you might find, like he did, that the most dangerous thing a man can do is to believe first. And then never stop. Welcome home. Your freedom begins now.